My name is Victoria. I'm 38 years old, and I work as a regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company. My job requires me to travel frequently. Sometimes I'm gone 3 or 4 days a week visiting hospitals and clinics across 3 states. For years, I thought my family was thriving despite my busy schedule. I had a loving husband named Marcus and our beautiful 9-year-old daughter, Lily. Marcus worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, which made him the perfect stay-at-home parent while I traveled for work. At least, that's what I believed. What I'm about to tell you is something I never imagined could happen in my own home, to my own child, by the person I trusted most in the world. If you're just starting to watch this story now, take a deep breath. Because what I discovered completely shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. And maybe, just maybe, it will help you recognize warning signs you might be missing in your own home. Before I go any further, I need to ask you something. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next story, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. It means the world to me to know which corner of the country or the world is listening to my story. It all started about 6 months ago when I noticed something different about Lily. My daughter had always been a bright, bubbly child. The kind of kid who would run to the door the moment I came home from a business trip, chattering a mile a minute about everything that happened while I was gone. She loved to draw, loved to dance around the living room, loved to tell elaborate stories about her imaginary friends. But after a particularly long trip, I'd been gone almost 2 weeks covering the entire Southeast Territory, I came home to a different child. When I walked through the door that Friday evening, suitcase in hand and arms open for a hug, Lily barely looked up from the couch where she was sitting. "Lily Bean, Mommy's home!" I called out, using the nickname I'd given her since she was a baby. She glanced at me briefly, gave a small wave, and went back to staring at the TV. Not the enthusiastic greeting I'd expected after 2 weeks apart. I looked at Marcus, who was standing in the kitchen doorway wiping his hands on a dish towel. He shrugged. "She's been a bit quiet lately," he said. "You know how kids are. Moody phases." I walked over to Lily and sat beside her on the couch. Up close, I could see dark circles under her eyes. Her hair, usually neat in the ponytail Marcus always fixed for her, looked hastily done. And there was something in her eyes, a sadness, a distance, that I'd never seen before. "Hey, sweetie," I said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Are you feeling okay?" "I'm fine, Mom," she replied without looking at me. "Did something happen at school? Are your friends being mean?" "No, Mom. Everything's fine." But her voice was flat, empty. This wasn't my daughter. That night at dinner, I watched her carefully. She barely touched her food, pushing the pasta around her plate with her fork. When Marcus asked her about her day, she gave one-word answers. When I tried to engage her in conversation about her upcoming birthday, she just nodded. After dinner, I went to tuck her in, hoping we could have some mother-daughter time alone. "Lily, baby, you can tell Mommy anything?" I said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "If something's bothering you, I want to help." For a moment, her eyes welled up with tears. My heart clenched. Something was definitely wrong. "Mommy, she started, then stopped abruptly. "What is it, honey?" She glanced toward her bedroom door, then back at me. "I miss you when you travel," she said finally. "I miss you too, sweetheart. But Daddy takes good care of you while I'm gone, right?" The question hung in the air. Lily's expression changed. Something flashed across her face that I couldn't quite read. Fear? Resignation? "Yeah," she said quietly. "Daddy takes care of me." But the way she said it made my blood run cold. Over the next few days, I paid closer attention. I noticed things I'd somehow missed before. Or maybe they were new. I couldn't tell anymore. Lily flinched whenever Marcus raised his voice, even slightly. She had developed a nervous habit of picking at her fingernails until they bled. She'd stopped drawing, which had always been her favorite activity. At bedtime, she insisted on keeping her door open and her nightlight on, something she hadn't needed since she was 4. One morning, I was helping her get dressed for school when I noticed bruises on her upper arms. 4 small circular marks, like fingerprints. "Lily, what happened here?" I asked, touching them gently. She pulled her arm away quickly. "I fell at recess." On your arms? I tried to catch myself. The explanation seemed reasonable, but something about the way she wouldn't meet my eyes bothered me. That evening, I mentioned it to Marcus while we were doing dishes. Did you know Lily has bruises on her arms? Oh, yeah, he said casually, not looking up from the plate he was scrubbing. She's been really clumsy lately, bumping into things. Growing pains, probably. You know how kids are at this age. There was that phrase again. You know how kids are. But I'd been around kids my whole life. I had 3 younger siblings. I'd babysat throughout high school. I'd been a mother for 9 years. And I knew that drastic behavioral changes weren't normal. They weren't just phases. Something was wrong with my daughter, and my husband's casual dismissal of it was starting to feel suspicious. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I'd had a trip scheduled to Atlanta for 3 days, but the client meeting got canceled at the last minute. Instead of staying in a hotel, I decided to surprise my family by coming home a day early. It was around 8:30 p.m. when I pulled into the driveway. Marcus's car was there, and I could see lights on in the house. I grabbed my suitcase and quietly let myself in through the front door, planning to surprise them. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Hello? I called out softly. No response. I set down my suitcase and walked toward the kitchen. Empty. The living room, also empty. Then I heard it. A sound from upstairs. A soft, muffled crying. My heart started racing. I took off my heels so I wouldn't make noise and crept up the stairs. The crying was coming from Lily's room, but her door was closed, and I could hear Marcus's voice inside. I pressed my ear against the door. I told you what happens when you don't listen, Marcus was saying, his voice cold and controlled. Didn't I? I'm sorry, Daddy, Lily sobbed. I'm sorry. I'll be better. You said that last time and the time before, but you keep making the same mistakes. Please, Daddy, I promise. The sound of a slap echoed through the door. My daughter's cry of pain cut through me like a knife. I grabbed the doorknob and flung the door open. The scene before me will be burned into my memory forever. Lily was cowering in the corner of her room, her hands covering her face. Her cheek was bright red. Tears streamed down her face. And Marcus, my husband, the father of my child, was standing over her with his hand raised, ready to strike again. What the hell is going on here? I demanded, my voice shaking with rage. Marcus spun around, his face going pale. Victoria? You're not supposed to be home until tomorrow. Answer my question. What are you doing to our daughter? She wasn't listening. She needed discipline. I rushed past him and scooped Lily into my arms. She clung to me, sobbing into my shoulder. Discipline? I repeated, my voice rising. You were hitting her. I barely touched her. She's being dramatic. I looked down at my daughter's red, swollen cheek, at the terror in her eyes, at the way she was trembling in my arms. Pack your things, I told Marcus, my voice deadly calm. Get out of this house. Now. Victoria, you're overreacting. All parents discipline their... Get out, I screamed. Get out before I call the police. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out of the room. I heard him go into our bedroom, heard drawers opening and closing, heard his footsteps on the stairs. The front door slammed. Only then did I allow myself to break down, holding my daughter and crying with her. That night, after Lily finally cried herself to sleep in my bed, she refused to be alone. I sat in the dark living room trying to process what I'd witnessed. My husband had been hitting our daughter. How long had this been going on? What else had he done that I hadn't seen? And why hadn't Lily told me? The last question haunted me the most. We'd always had such an open relationship. I'd always told her she could tell me anything. Why had she kept this secret? The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't leave Lily alone. Not now. Not ever again. When she woke up, I made her favorite breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes. We sat at the kitchen table, and I tried to talk to her. Lily, sweetie, I need you to tell me the truth about something very important. She stared at her plate, not eating. Has Daddy been hurting you? For a long time? Silence. Baby, please, I need to know. I can't protect you if I don't know what's been happening. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, He told me not to tell you. My heart shattered. Why, honey? Why couldn't you tell Mommy? Because... She looked up at me with eyes full of fear and shame. Because he said, if I told you, you would leave us. He said, you'd be so disappointed in me for being bad that you wouldn't want to be my mommy anymore. I had to cover my mouth to keep from sobbing out loud. Oh, baby, sweet baby girl, that's not true. That could never be true. You could never do anything that would make me stop loving you. Never. But I am bad, she insisted, tears streaming down her face. That's why Daddy has to punish me, because I'm always doing things wrong. What things? I don't know, she cried. Sometimes it's because I'm too loud. Sometimes it's because I'm too quiet. Sometimes it's because I didn't clean my room fast enough. Sometimes it's because I asked too many questions. Sometimes, her voice broke. Sometimes he just said he had a bad day, and I was making it worse by existing. I pulled her into my arms, and we both cried. My daughter, my beautiful, innocent, wonderful daughter, had been living in a nightmare while I was out building my career, thinking everything at home was fine. Over the next few days, Lily slowly opened up more about what had been happening. It started about a year ago, she told me. Around the time I'd gotten promoted and my travel schedule increased. At first, it was just yelling. Marcus would lose his temper over small things. A spilled drink, a toy left out, homework that took too long. Then the yelling escalated to punishments. He'd make her stand in the corner for hours. He'd take away all her toys and books. He'd send her to bed without dinner. And then, about 6 months ago, the hitting started. It wasn't every day, Lily explained in that heartbreaking, matter-of-fact way that children have when they're trying to make sense of abuse. Just when I was really bad, and he always said he was sorry after. He'd give me ice cream and tell me he loved me and that he just wanted me to be a good girl. The classic cycle of abuse: violence, followed by remorse and affection, followed by more violence. Did he ever, I had to force the words out, did he ever hurt you in other ways? Touch you inappropriately? No, she said quickly. Nothing like that, just hitting. And sometimes he'd grab my arms really hard. That explained the fingerprint bruises. And once he pushed me and I hit my head on the wall. I remembered about 3 months ago when she'd had a bump on her forehead. Marcus said she'd tripped running down the stairs. Another lie. How many lies had I believed? Why did it get worse when Mommy started traveling more? I asked gently. Lily shrugged. I think Daddy doesn't like being alone with me. He says I remind him too much of you. He says I have your stubborn streak and your attitude, and when you're gone, there's no one to. She trailed off. No one to what, honey? No one to make him happy, so he gets angry more. My daughter had been serving as an emotional punching bag for my husband's frustrations, and it was my fault for not seeing it sooner. That afternoon, I made 2 phone calls that would change our lives. The first was to a lawyer. Miss Victoria, the attorney said after I explained the situation, what you're describing is clear-cut child abuse. You need to file a police report immediately and get a protective order. Will that be enough to keep him away from her? With the evidence you have, the bruises, your eyewitness account of him striking her, and hopefully your daughter's testimony, yes, the court will take this very seriously. What about custody? He's her father. Will he still get visitation rights? Not unsupervised, and possibly not at all if the judge deems him a danger to the child. But you need to act quickly. Document everything. Take photos of her bruises. Get her to a doctor for an examination. Build a paper trail. The second call was to a child psychologist who specialized in trauma. Dr. Sarah Chen agreed to see us the next day. Your daughter has been living in a state of chronic fear, Dr. Chen explained after her initial session with Lily. This kind of sustained abuse from a parent, especially one who alternates between violence and affection, creates something called traumatic bonding. She's confused because part of her still loves her father and wants his approval, even though he's been hurting her. How do I help her? Time, consistency, and therapy. She needs to feel safe again. She needs to understand that what happened wasn't her fault, and she needs to learn that love doesn't include violence. Dr. Chen paused. Miss Victoria, I have to ask, how are you doing? This is traumatic for you too. I hadn't allowed myself to think about that. I'd been so focused on Lily that I hadn't processed my own feelings. I'm angry, I admitted. I'm furious at him for hurting her, but I'm also furious at myself for not seeing it, for being gone so much, for believing his lies, for not protecting my own child. That's a common response from non-offending parents, Dr. Chen said gently. But you need to understand something important. You are not responsible for his choices. He chose to abuse your daughter. He chose to hide it from you. He chose to manipulate both of you. Those were his decisions, not yours. But if I'd been home more, he might have hidden it better. He might have waited until you were asleep. Abusers are incredibly skilled at concealment. The fact that you discovered it at all and that you took immediate action to protect your daughter is what matters. The police report was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Sitting in that sterile interview room at the police station, recounting what I'd seen, listening to them interview my daughter, watching her small voice shake as she described the abuse, it was almost unbearable. But it was necessary. The detective handling the case was a woman in her 40s named Detective Rodriguez. She had kind eyes and a gentle manner with Lily. "You're very brave for telling us what happened," she told Lily. "You helped us understand the truth." After the interview, Detective Rodriguez pulled me aside. "Miss Victoria, I have to tell you, cases like this are more common than people think. Parents under stress, especially when there's a change in family dynamics, like increased travel or work pressure, sometimes they take it out on their kids." "Does that make it okay?" I asked bitterly. "Absolutely not. But it helps explain it. And it helps us build a case. Your husband's behavior follows a classic pattern. My guess is he'll claim he was just disciplining your daughter, that you're overreacting, maybe even that she's lying or exaggerating." "She's 9 years old with bruises on her body," I said. "How can anyone claim that's appropriate discipline?" "You'd be surprised what people can justify to themselves," she replied sadly. "But don't worry, we have the evidence we need. He'll face charges for child abuse, and with your testimony and your daughter's medical records, we can make sure he doesn't have unsupervised contact with her again." Marcus was arrested 2 days later. The police found him staying at his brother's apartment. According to Detective Rodriguez, he was shocked by the arrest, insisting it was all a misunderstanding, that he'd never hurt Lily, that I was lying because I wanted to punish him for some imaginary slight. His denial was almost as painful as the abuse itself. How could he hit our daughter repeatedly, terrorize her, traumatize her, and then claim it never happened? The arraignment was brief. Marcus pleaded not guilty. His lawyer argued that this was a case of parental discipline that had been misconstrued as abuse, that I was an absent mother who didn't understand the challenges of being the primary caregiver. I sat in that courtroom, listening to them paint me as the villain in this story, and felt rage coursing through my veins. But then the prosecutor presented the evidence: photos of Lily's bruises, medical records documenting injuries Marcus had explained away as accidents, Dr. Chen's preliminary evaluation, my own testimony about what I'd witnessed, and most powerfully, a video interview with Lily where she calmly, clearly explained what her father had done to her. The judge's face grew stern as he watched. When the video ended, he looked directly at Marcus. "Mr. Harrison, I'm granting a temporary protective order prohibiting you from any contact with the minor child. You are not to come within 500 feet of her home, her school, or any location where she may be present. Any violation of this order will result in immediate incarceration. Do you understand?" "Your Honor, this is ridiculous," Marcus sputtered. "She's my daughter. I have rights." "You forfeited those rights when you chose to assault a child," the judge interrupted coldly. "Preliminary hearing is set for 6 weeks from now. Until then, you have no contact. None. Is that clear?" Marcus's face went red with anger, but his lawyer quickly whispered something to him and he nodded stiffly. As we left the courtroom, I felt Lily's small hand slip into mine. "Is Daddy mad at me?" She whispered. "Daddy doesn't get to be mad at you," I replied firmly. "And he doesn't get to hurt you anymore. You're safe now." That was 8 months ago. Today, Lily is a different child. Not completely healed. Trauma like that takes years to fully process, but she's getting there. She's back to drawing, though now her pictures often include herself as a superhero with a shield. Dr. Chen says that's her way of processing the idea of protection. She's sleeping better, though she still occasionally has nightmares. When she does, she comes to my room and we talk about it until she feels safe again. She's smiling more, laughing more, playing with friends again. Last week, she tried out for the school play and got a part. The pride on her face when she told me was worth more than any promotion or work achievement I've ever earned. As for Marcus, he took a plea deal. He pled guilty to third-degree assault and child endangerment in exchange for avoiding jail time. Instead, he got 5 years probation, mandatory anger management classes, and supervised visitation with Lily, if and when she decides she wants to see him. So far, she hasn't wanted to. Maybe when I'm older, she told me recently. Maybe when I can understand why he did it, but not now. I don't feel safe with him. And I support that decision completely. My relationship with Marcus is over. We're divorced now. I got full custody, the house, and he pays child support. But more importantly, I changed my job. I explained the situation to my boss, vaguely, not going into all the details, and requested a transfer to a position that doesn't require travel. I took a pay cut and a step down in seniority, but I don't care. No job, no amount of money, no career achievement is worth more than my daughter's safety and well-being. I'm home every single night now. I pick her up from school. I make her dinner. I help with homework. I'm there, and I'll never take that for granted again. Looking back on this nightmare, I've learned some painful lessons that I want to share with anyone watching this. First, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong with your child, it probably is. Don't let anyone, including your partner, dismiss your concerns as paranoia or overreaction. Second, behavioral changes in children are rarely just phases. Sudden withdrawal, fear, anxiety, regression, sleep problems, aggression, these are signs that something is wrong. Pay attention. Third, child abuse happens in all kinds of families. Rich families, poor families, educated families, religious families. It crosses every demographic line. Don't assume it can't happen to you. Fourth, abusers are skilled manipulators. They know how to appear normal, loving, and responsible to the outside world while terrorizing their victims in private. Don't be fooled by appearances. And finally, children almost never lie about abuse. When a child tells you they're being hurt, believe them, even if it means believing something horrible about someone you love. I think about how close I came to not discovering the truth. If that client meeting hadn't been canceled, if I hadn't come home early, if I hadn't walked up those stairs at that exact moment, how much longer would it have gone on? How much more damage would have been done to my beautiful daughter? The thought keeps me awake some nights. But then I remember, I did come home. I did discover it. I did protect her, and that's what matters. If you're watching this and you recognize similar warning signs in your own family or in a family you know, please don't ignore them. Talk to the child privately. Look for physical signs like bruises, burns, or marks. Pay attention to behavioral changes. Document everything. And if you have reasonable suspicion that a child is being abused, report it. Call Child Protective Services. Call the police. Tell a teacher, a counselor, a doctor. You might be wrong. You might cause some temporary discomfort or embarrassment, but you might also save a child's life. Because abuse doesn't stop on its own. It only gets worse until someone intervenes. Be that someone. Be the voice for a child who's too scared to use their own. I wish someone had noticed sooner, for Lily's sake. I wish a teacher had asked more questions about those accidents. I wish a friend's parent had thought twice about the way she flinched around Marcus. I wish I hadn't been so trusting, so blind, so absent. But I can't change the past. All I can do is be present now. All I can do is love my daughter fiercely and protect her absolutely. All I can do is help her heal and grow into the strong, confident woman I know she'll become, because she's a survivor. And survivors are the strongest people I know. Today, Lily is thriving. She's back to making straight A's. She has a best friend named Sophie who comes over for sleepovers. She's learning to play the piano. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up. She's also learned something valuable, though I wish she'd never had to learn it this way. She knows now that love should never hurt, that families should be safe places, that adults who truly love you will protect you, not harm you. Last night, as I was tucking her in, she said something that brought tears to my eyes. "Mom, I'm glad you came home early that night." "Me too, baby. Me too." "And Mom, I'm not scared anymore. Not like before." "That's because you're safe now, and you always will be. I promise." She smiled, that genuine, bright smile that had been missing for so long, and closed her eyes. As I watched her drift off to sleep, peaceful and secure, I thought about how different our lives could have been if I hadn't trusted my instincts that something was wrong. Sometimes the hardest part of being a parent isn't the big decisions or the dramatic moments. It's paying attention to the quiet signs, the small changes, the unspoken fears. It's choosing to see what you don't want to see and act on what you don't want to believe. It's putting your child first, even when it costs you everything. And it's worth it, every single time. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories that matter, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect someone you love? Have you ever missed warning signs that, looking back, were obvious? Share your experience in the comments. You never know who might need to hear your story. Thank you for listening to mine. With love and hope for healing, Victoria.